Thiik is part of the family, and we know him for years and decades. And he's now, I think he's works in the South Sudan Foreign Ministry as an ambassador. I think he worked for sort of environment. Yeah. So it's left to me to say whatever I. Yeah. So we'd be grateful to read whatever, if possible, if I give you sort of quarter an hour maximum.
I'll try and do that.
Yes, it's 4:45, so if I stop at 5.
Yeah, not my word, so.
Well, you could skip some paragraph. You could skip some paragraph. Okay, right.
Well, good afternoon, Ronaldo. I stand before you here to speak, but not my own words. These are the words of Uncle Francis Deng, who expressed regret for not being here himself to present and grace this occasion in memory of his own brother and a friend. Dr. Ahmed, Uncle Francis also expressed his gratitude to you for organizing this important event in Remembering Bona Malwal to be great. It's a rather long but fitting tribute to Uncle Bona. Uncle Francis spoke with us last night, he and Marco. We were trying to negotiate how best we can condense his text.
That's a very good.
But we were adamant that we needed this text to be read as is. So I'm going to try my best to do justice to it. Well, a testament to a dear friend. Theologies tend to be glowing praise for the deceased, and rightly so. At the same time, there is much to be said by remembering a person as an authentically complex character without diminishing his or her virtues. This was an important guiding principle in writing a book about my father, the man holding a book, a biography of power, liberty, and change. It was a principle I explicitly stated in the questionnaire we used in conducting the interviews. My position was that the value of father's image and the legacy and my own integrity as the author of his biography depended on my presenting him objectively as a real human being with his strengths and weaknesses, virtues and shortcomings. We urged the people we interviewed to give us a balanced picture of the positives and the negatives by father. My earlier tribute to Bona, which was read at the funeral ceremony in Juba, and a recorded message, which was played at the burial celebrations in his village at Molban, more or less conform to the conventional practices. In this testimony, I would like to depart from that practice to paint a portrait of Bona as a whole person with more complex human attributes. In that sense, it is more an essay than a statement, than a standard theology or tribute. I must reiterate that although Bona and I often disagree on issues and our relations were complex, he was a very close friend, a brother, and my best friend. It was a relationship ordained by our father on his deathbed when he glowingly praised Bona and urged us to work together, which we ourselves developed and deepened. Bona always addressed me as Mading Deng, and I call him Malwal Madudrin which I suspected was our our instinctive way of acknowledging the close friendship between our fathers, Madubring and then Majuk, that they had bequeathed to us. Though ours was a complicated relationship, which some people found difficult to understand, we did a great deal together in the service of our country. As I elaborated in my earlier tribute, we contributed significantly to the 1972 Addis Ababa Agreement that ended the first civil war in the South and the process that culminated in the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement that ended the Second War. A portrait of Bona Malwal as I knew him. Bona and I always related and presented ourselves as eight mate. Our passport, typically of the pattern in Sudan, then, when the dates of birth were constructed to honor January 1st, the date of independence from colonial rule of January 1st, 1956, show Bona and I as born in January 1st, 1938. We once showed our passport at the State Department in Washington. The receptionist asked whether we were twins. Towards the end of his life, Bona recast our age to me as much older than what is in our passport. He went as far as telling me that he thought that we were close to 100, which made me ask him why he was in such a hurry. And indeed, obituaries now say that he died at the age of 97. This might be how he wanted to be remembered. I always suspected that he was probably older than me, but not that extent. When I reflected on Bona, I knew I see three interrelated principles relevant to how he dealt with the world. These principles are idealism, realism, and pragmatism. Idealism provides a person with a framework of principles that keep a human being a moral order guided by overriding values and principles. Although ideals provide guidance, they are always reflected in the way a person conducted himself or herself and in human relations. Bona was a very thoughtful, generous, and hospitable person who was always ready to help others and provide for the needy within his means. This was no easy feat under the increasing demands of dependency resulting from insecurity and lack of productivity. I have always argued that corruption is not only a function of greed, but also of need. When rural masses are forced to abandon agriculture and migrate to towns to depend on the few earning relatives, those with access to public revenues may be tempted to dig their hands into the copper to help their relatives. Bona was very intolerant of corruption, which he publicly deplored and condemned. While helping those in need, he was a prudent manager of scarce resources under challenging conditions. Bona was staunchly committed to the ideals of democracy, civilian rule, moral integrity, and human rights. He was also a realist who dealt with the world as it is and not as it should be. This inevitably entailed compromising principle for functional purposes. The challenge then becomes one of determining how to live and interact with diverse characteristics flexibly and constructively, with essential empirical adjustment to the context as needed. Correlatively, pragmatism is what one does to make the best of an inherently complex and often contestable situation. In a sense, pragmatism comprises a set of principles and action that bridge idealism and realism to achieve optimum functional benefit under challenging circumstances. Bona managed this complex and often inherently conflictual principle with remarkable agility. However, the interplay of these principles in Bona Malwal's view and interaction with others made some people with whom he interacted misunderstand his position on issues, even though he was a very straightforward person in presenting his views without ambiguity. Bona was Bona was what American would call a straight shooter who did not beat around the bush. I saw Bona interact with the leaders of the Islamist regime in the Sudan in an adversarial, confrontational that I felt compelled to intervene to moderate. Paradoxically, I was stunned by the positive response of those individuals who seemed to admire his straightforwardness and who later became partners in the government of national unity under the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. Bona was a self-confident individual who hardly ever doubted his judgment, but he was also a good listener and often sought my opinion on issues and would heed my advice when persuaded. Those occasions were, however, exceptions to Bona's self-assurance in his opinion and decision. One of his favorite statements with which he prefaced his opinion was, "I'm very clear on my mind," which left little room for any counter opinion. But that never deterred me from giving him my point of view on the issues involved, which he graciously nearly always welcomed. Our collaborations on the coast of the South Sudan. Bona was unwaveringly committed to the right of self-determination for South Sudan with a view of independence, while I was a believer in the unity of the country within the framework of the SPLM New Sudan vision of inclusivity, equality, and dignity for all. I advocated for self-determination as a pressure on the government to create conditions for consensual unity and not for the South to secede, a position Bona thought was unattainable. Ironically, even before the CPA that created a government of national unity during the interim period before the vote in the self-determination referendum. A prominent Northern Sudanese told me that the general view in the Northern Sudan was that Bona was a unionist and I a separatist. That was something Bona and I could not understand, except as his reading of our true position on pertinent issues. and a manner in which we manage the complex situation. When the Sudan People Liberation Movement Army, SPLM-A, was established, although we were not formally members of the movement, we worked with the leadership, specifically with the chairperson, Dr. Karen, in promoting the cause of the South in the United States. My friendship with John Garang began when he was a student at Iowa State University, and I was doing my doctorate at Yale University. After which I joined the United Nations Secretariat in New York, where he visited me. Our friendship deepened after he obtained his PhD. He and his family visited us in Canada, where I was an ambassador. On their way back to Sudan, we discussed the development back home and the deteriorating situation with Numeris imposition of Sharia. It was discreet about his view on the situation, which made me believe, of course wrongly, that he had been fully co-opted into the establishment. I later visited Dr. John Garang in Addis Ababa and told him that Bona had confided to me that after leaving the country, he had sent him 2 letters and did not get a response. I informed him that Bona was offended and that there was a risk of coming out openly against the SPLM. Why antagonize your own men and supporter to turn against you? I posed a rhetorical question. Garang was very apologetic and explained that it was not out of disregard, but because of the preoccupation of war. He wrote a letter of apology to Bona, and we arranged for him to meet in Addis. They struck a warm relationship that ushered into a close partnership, which made Bona an ardent supporter and prolific advocate of the movement. His monthly magazine, the Democratic Gazette, which he was producing in Oxford, became a vital source of information on the developments in the field and a very effective tool for promoting the SPLM and the cause of the South Sudan. Bona became my source of information and development in the field. He often joined me and my team of supporters for the cause of South Sudan in Washington in our mission activities. I arranged our program of meeting around Washington, and one time with our mutual friend, Boutros Ghali, the then UN Secretary General. Ironically, Boutros criticized us for not joining the SPLM. We responded by asking whether he would have met with us if we were members of the movement. Our position was that we were more helpful to the movement outside of formal membership in the movement.
Thiik,
Yes.
it's already 5:05.
How many minutes did I do so far?
Well, you've done 20 minutes. Yeah, you've done 20 minutes. But please, because there is one more from the Twitch community and then the audience and my own contribution. So if you could kindly skip, because it's going to appear in a print.
Okay.
I'll be responsible. So you could tell Francis.
Okay, but they are headed, they are sections, so I will
Skip the last section. You go to the last section.
Okay, the next section is
The last one, not the next, the last one. Look at it, very same page.
Okay. Our role in national dialogue. How about this section, our role in the national dialogue?
When would you see?
The last one is
Can I please pay attention? Yeah.
Conclude that one.
controversy over the case of a BA.
Oh, yes.
An area in which my relations with Bona were severely tested had to do with the VA. Bona maintains an ambivalent view of the problem of the VA between Sudan and South Sudan. While he was a strong supporter for the cause of VA, he had acrimonious relations with several VA leaders who were members of the SPLM, some of whom he thought had influenced the elections against him in Thiik constituency, which had always elected him. He went as far as aligning that the SPLM leadership, specifically John Garang, had ordered all leaders to target his security. I think we'll move on. I agree with you. Okay, the final,
Well done, well done.
the final last one, reflection on the legacy of Bona Malwal.
Yes, that's what we need, yes.
Building on the insights of my close relationship with Bona Malwal, I have tried in this tribute to present him holistically as a complex personality who embodied the tensions of balancing fundamental values of idealism, realism, and pragmatism. Delicately balancing this principle makes him a leader who prudently and effectively managed the affairs of his public and private life with remarkable efficiency. Bona and I were soul brothers and dear friends who always stood together in kinder solidarity and in service of our country and our people. We often disregard, but with a deep conviction that we were fundamentally on the same page, publicly and personally. His death at the time of immense challenges facing our people deprived the country of an energetic leader for whom public service was always an overriding goal. Bona will be sorely missed, but the legacy of his service to our people and to the nation will endure. In line with the Dinka concept of holding the head of the dead person upright, a principle of permanent identity and influence through the memory of the dead by the descendant, relatives, friends, and all those one he has touched in a memorable way. There is little doubt that Bona will continue to live in our memory and for generations to come. And may the Almighty God also rest his soul in eternal peace with our ancestors and all our beloved predecessors. Francis Deng, January 20th. You are responsible.
I am.